Hey, Gaurav, welcome to the EcomCrew podcast.
Thanks, Mike, for having me. It's my pleasure to be part of this podcast. I've been following your channel for some time and
Yeah,
must appreciate this whole spectrum of content that you put together. It's very useful and very informative. So, again, thanks a lot for having me today.
yeah, absolutely. It's funny you mentioned the whole spectrum of e-commerce content. Somehow we've made it to the end of 2022 without discussing what we're going to be talking about today. Just augmented reality and just kind of the future of e-commerce and it's interesting because of my like other life, my real life, like amongst friends, and just when I'm alone with my thoughts, this is like what I think about quite a bit. Just kind of the future and where it's heading, and for whatever reason, it hasn't made its way onto the podcast. So very excited to talk about that. Before we dig in too far, I always like to give guests an opportunity just to 30 to 60 seconds to introduce themselves, what they're up to, and how they came to be on the show today.
Sure, that would be my pleasure. And glad that I'm the first one on your podcast to talk about 3D and AR. It's always good to be the first, as we have been with Avataar in terms of our journey as well. So a bit of backdrop on myself. I'm one of the founders at Avataar and I play the role of Chief Product Officer. In our journey right now, what I'm focused on is utilizing our repeatable product market fit to deliver higher ROI outcomes for our sellers and merchants in terms of their conversion uplift, sales increase using 3D and AR, as well as a delightful visual discovery for the end consumer. This kind of flows in from the notion of us being a B2B2C company where we are not only focused on the middle B, which are our partner brands, but also the NC being the consumer. Uh, for me personally, it's been almost like sort of a dozen years in e-commerce tech domain. Majority of it spent at Avataar, building and sort of starting to win with our deep tech platform. So that's a bit on me.
Awesome. So I want to take a few minutes and just kind of talk about the overall landscape, because if you were to have blindfolded me in 2015 and spun me around and transported me into the year, I'll say 2023 because we're almost there, I would have put a lot of money on the fact that this technology would have been a lot more ubiquitous by now. It seems like the adoption curve has been a little slow. I would double down if I could make another bet and say that in the next 2 to 5 years, it's coming like a freight train. I mean, all of this technology it already exists. It's just some of the end user touch points I think aren't quite there yet. But certainly I've even used it in real life. If you're there's a shoe company, I forgot which one it was, where you can just like point your phone at your feet and you can see what the shoes look like on your feet. You can do it with furniture and see what a piece of furniture will look like in your room. I think just like a lot of technology, it takes a little bit of time for adoption. But like once it's there, you think about like an iPhone or just smartphones. I think people forget that this is only 11-year-old technology. We all take it for granted, like it's been here forever. But I think that's where this is heading. Where do you kind of see the trajectory going?
I absolutely agree, Mike. Inflection for any technology happens when hardware and software comes together. In case of AR, what we saw is that the software obviously had a leap start, a sort of a motion ahead vis-a-vis the hardware evolution. So we have seen AR being used for filters and for different top of the funnel or mid funnel engagement, even in the commerce space. End of 2019, early 2020 is the time period when the hardware also kind of caught up speed with the evolution of software, because then the majority of the OEMs in terms of the mobile devices, they had the chipset and the GPU capabilities to support 3D and AR experiences. It's the adoption of devices post that and the integration of web AR and 3D and AR across these channels is what kind of made it way more mainstream as it was prior to onset of 2020. And As you rightly pointed out, that adoption could have been much faster. We started our journey back in 2015, when most of, like, hardly anyone was even talking about AR. AR wasn't even a term which was used in mainstream. But we sort of saw the evolution happening in the consumer ecosystem as to why it will become more important. Just to lay a bit on that, we all live in a 3D world. 60% of our sensory perception is visual. Unfortunately, the digital consumption of those visual content has been limited to 2D screens. Whereas audio, on the other hand, which is only 20% of our sensory perception, has had the benefit of spatial depth for decades now, using surround sound noise cancellation. So we started out to bring that spatial depth to visual discovery, and we also waited a good initial 4.5 to 5 years for that inflection to happen. But yes, after that, it's, as you rightly said, it's sort of a free train now. Over the next 2 to 5 years, we see immense adoption happening in this ecosystem. Especially the push towards metaverse has also helped it a lot, and that's where we see the consumer behavior evolving to be.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at what Meta's doing, I have a hard time even calling them that still because it seems so crazy to me. It's always Facebook, but I'll go along for the corporate line of Meta, what Meta's up to. It might be the biggest single bet in corporate America history. The amount of money that they were investing into, virtual reality and augmented reality, and they're miles ahead. Like no one else has even really got anything. I mean, there's some hardware and stuff out there, but I really see an evolution. And Facebook isn't stupid. Like they want to be the next Apple. You think about like how Apple has owned, phones for so long, and in a lot of ways, even their computers, where the hardware and software is like all integrated, and I mean, they become the largest company in the history of the world. I think Facebook sees that same opportunity, and so they're working on both the hardware and the software. And I think that if there's any one book that I ever read in my life that was labeled science fiction but is actually science reality, it's Ready Player One. And I really think that we're heading to that world. And Facebook has their new hardware. You should definitely check it out if you guys haven't, that are listening out there, where I can really see the augmented reality world piling in. I mean, it's wild. Like you can have your physical laptop in front of you, but then like 3 virtual screens, in the background. And that same thing can be applied in your room when you're like shopping for furniture. And I think that we're going to have another tech disruption very similar to something like Uber or Airbnb, where you think you know how to order a taxi, or you think you know how to go book a hotel. I think there's a lot of industries that are going to be disrupted like this. It might be furniture seems to be the one that comes to the top of my mind. I'd be curious, and it'd be fun to talk about some other industries that are heading down that way as well, where you just don't need to even leave your house to have a full experience with that physical world, and actually probably have a better experience because you're not having to go back and remeasure it and wonder what it's going to look like with your paint colors and your area rug and all this stuff, and just it'll basically be there even though it's not physically there.
No, absolutely. If I could double click on that, online commerce have been there now for decades. What we have seen is that it has not been able to penetrate to a significant portion of the overall retail ecosystem. Just for the context of the viewers today, as of the end of last year, online commerce was just 11.8% of the overall retail space. Even if I
it's
were
still
to take
crazy,
out,
right?
yeah, it's crazy. If it
Because
was
it feels
there
like
for the
in my
time.
world, like I'm at like 98%. It's crazy to me that it's only the stat comes out every year, and I always feel like it's so low. But I know where you're going with this. I didn't mean to interrupt, but
Yes.
there's still a huge piece of the pie to capture.
Yeah, and even if we were to take out certain categories which are not so, or which are very physically driven, let's say
Yeah.
automotive, gas, restaurants, then also online commerce is just meager 17.2% of the overall retail space. Now, what I wanted to touch upon is the key aspects that you mentioned, of consumer experience. As I look at it, there are 3 things to cover. First is the touch and feel of the product in terms of how the surface and the properties are. Second is the look of the product in the context where the user wants to put that product. And third is the fit of the product in terms of where it will uh, come within the measurements of the space I have. Now, traditionally, physical has been focused on touch and feel. Uh, Look and fit has always been a perceived solution where I have to imagine as a consumer, I have to imagine how it will look and fit my space. With AR, the power comes in is that the look and fit becomes real. I can now take that couch or that piece of furniture, place it in my living space, and then see how it looks and goes with the decor of this piece, as well as will it fit the space that I have, or the will it come through the narrow hallway that I have in my house. Now, the interesting piece, and which is the more evolving piece, and which kind of completes the whole spectrum, is reverse AR for the context of the viewers, where the users can today carry a replica of their physical spaces along with them in just on their mobile devices. It's like scanning your living spaces into a virtual replica and take it along with you. Now, what it enables them to do is that, let's say you walk into a physical store, you can use reverse AR to now place that physical product into your virtual space. So the touch and feel of the product remains, but in addition to that, you also get the look and fit of your space. So that kind of completes the entire spectrum for users. And it is for the first time using AR and reverse AR, we have a solution which kind of delivers every element of user experience as needed. So that's where we see this evolving into and adding a lot more value in everyone's life.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that because I can think about furniture. We kind of keep on this because it's just a great example. And so if you're just shopping purely at home, you can see what it looks like in your space, but you don't get that touch and feel part. Because if it's a sofa, you kind of want to sit on it and see if it's comfortable for you. And is that material like going to make me sweaty, or is it, just kind of, is it soft and, kind of inviting or whatever? But that reverse AR, that's actually nothing, or something I had not ever thought of, but I can see basically an app on everyone's phone, or just becomes a standard place of you have your house 3D mapped on your phone, and everywhere you go, it's just kind of with you like a credit card or, some sort of digital wallet. And you're like, oh, I wonder what that would look like in my house. And you can have that reality at any time if you've mapped your house and or your space. That's fascinating, actually.
No, absolutely. And that's where we're seeing adoption as well happening. Of course, the initial adoption today uh, from the commerce context, Mike, it has been towards AR and 3D. That's the stepping stone or the initial building blocks for the whole sector. And there are various industries which are getting benefited. It's not just about furniture, but we have seen conversion uplift, up to even 90 plus percentages in terms of these sales conversion uplift, with segments like electronics, computer and audio, sports equipments, kitchen to even fashion accessories to footwear, as you were earlier mentioning, jewelry. There's so many categories today that we empower through our platform. And we have seen across all of them conversion uplift happening by using 3D and replacing the erstwhile 2D touch points which were in the form of images or videos, replacing them with life-size interactive 3D. That has provided so much of context for the users that we have actually, started calling it more of contextual reality, because it provides a frame of reference for user in terms of the product that they're buying. When they're putting the money behind it, they can put it into the reference or the frame where they want to eventually use it and then make an informed purchase decision. So we have seen so much value being created with it, and it's just the early days. And there's so much capability from a tech perspective. We are just scratching the surface right now. With reverse AR coming, with this becoming so immersive that it's persistent around you, with wearables, AR glasses, mixed reality headsets, and whatnot. You will have these spaces always around you in terms of these virtual and physical overlaps. And as we go on, this will only make it more and more prevalent for consumers to behave and interact in such spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we were kind of talking about already, I mean, the technology is already here. We're not talking about science fiction.
Yes.
I've always been a big believer in, early adoption of technology is where the opportunity is. And we've been through this several times in my career, at least. From just when I first got started to just basically being there when computers were first kind of becoming a thing in a home, becoming more prevalent in offices. Was just kind of doing that type of stuff, to SEO, back in 2003, and content marketing, to even just getting into e-commerce, relatively early on. And e-commerce has evolved from, drop shipping being kind of the thing, to just going to Alibaba and finding random products and selling them, to obviously Amazon, having platforms like Shopify out there that make it easy to sell in your own store. I think that this is really the next wave. And I think the problem, people get stuck in their daily lives and what they know and what they're comfortable with, and don't think about this stuff and the pace in which change can happen. I would encourage people to spend some time looking into this stuff and seeing what's already available, both from the VR and AR, but also like AI stuff. I mean, the AI stuff these days, in the last 3 months, I've really been kind of smacked over the head with it, with just the amazingness of the ability for AI to generate images with like a sentence. Like, you tell it, like, I want a painting of like two dudes driving a golf cart on the moon, and it'll just generate this thing out of thin air. I see it in the SEO world, where there's tools now that will write all the content for you. It's not 100% yet, but it's unbelievably good. I mean, it's wild to see how a computer can generate all of that content. There was a podcast circulating. I'm not sure if you've seen this, Gaurav, recently, of Steve Jobs and Joe Rogan having a conversation together, a podcast. The whole thing was generated with AI. I mean, it sounds a little nonsensical, but it sounds real as can be. And I also, again, I look at the augmented reality and just the seamlessness of like how e-commerce is going to adopt that. And if you can be early to the party, be one of the first ones in a niche to be adopting that, it just gives you such an opportunity, like probably a generational opportunity to pull away from the pack and beat the players that will be slow to adapt. And they'll be the legacy brand names that you're very aware of, that will be the ones that'll be slow to adapt, because they're Fortune 500 companies and they can't do things quickly. But if you're a smaller, nimble company that can be at the forefront of this, I think it's an amazing opportunity.
Two very important points that you mentioned over there. First one about the content part. Yeah, one of the biggest constraint for 3D adoption has been the content side. That it has never been easy to provide scalable and at highly realistic quality 3D content for the ecosystem to pick up. That's where AI and computer vision is changing the game. You mentioned about AI creating images in the 2D space. On our platform, what we have developed using neural radiance fields is using just a set of images of a product, create a life-size 3D in a fully automated manner. So erstwhile, what used to take days, sometimes weeks, for a 3D artist to create as a fully functional 3D model with high fidelity and all realistic surface properties and everything, our platform does it in matter of just 30 odd minutes today. So that has kind of helped, and it's going to help a lot. It's just the again early days, because we unveiled that tech only June this year, and have been working with some of the key players in the ecosystem to keep building upon that. But that's where the content constraint which used to be there would be kind of unlocked. The shackles would be removed, and then everyone and anyone can start making 3D content. So that would be very important. And the other point which you very rightly mentioned, the change is always brought about by a new entrant in the ecosystem. But that's one reason, as you mentioned, being nimble, and second also being that hunger that a new player brings along with it in terms of creating a disruption in the ecosystem that we see. And we are also at Avataar very big believers of that in terms of driving change by dreaming big and creating that shift in the ecosystem. So we are also doing our bit to bring about that.
Yeah, very cool. So I was doing some snooping on your website. I love stats, and so this is right off your homepage, but those that listen to this podcast a lot know I love things like the e-commerce fuel annual report, and Jungle Scout does one as well, where you just get into a bunch of stats that make you think. Right? I mean, it's like how much e-commerce sales are happening on Amazon. How many of them are private label sellers? How many of those are Chinese sellers? What are people spending on PPC? What are people's average conversion rate? I think that these types of stats are super important to benchline yourself. And I love the stats you have on the homepage here that this technology gives a greater than 3x increase in sales conversions, has people engaging with it for an average of 4 minutes, and a 60% increase in add to cart, for visitors. Again, I mean, it just goes to show you like how quickly things can change and what you can do by being at the forefront of this. I'm surprised that this doesn't exist in more spaces. Like we're right now personally in the market for some blinds. And I'm shocked that this doesn't exist in this space, but it's coming. And I think the first one of these companies to adopt it is going to just pull away from the pack as a for instance. The process right now is so clunky. Like I got to order samples and wait for those to arrive. And then, then you still don't get a full feel for what it's going to look like in your home. And you're making a relatively expensive purchase. I mean, we're looking at it dropping $5,000 to $6,000 on some roller shades that are motorized, and the ones that we have in the house here are just kind of looking a little bit tired. And it would be just such a better experience if that was available in the AR world, where you can just like point the camera at the window and see what that would look like in real life. I just again see so many opportunities, and I think the one that installs it first, their business increases 3x. You get there's only so many levers you can pull in e-commerce. It's your conversion rate, it's your traffic, it's what you're spending on your cost of goods and what you spend on PPC. But if you suddenly had a 3x higher conversion rate, now you can spend more money on marketing. Your profitability shoots up. You're expanding quicker. It allows you to grow your business way quicker, et cetera, et cetera. And so I don't know. I just wanted to mention those stats because I think that it's just another way to really hammer home what's coming.
Yeah, or maybe get higher bang for the buck with the marketing spend that you already have, given the ROI uplift is higher. Maybe just to add to the list of stats that you mentioned, and again, it's early days for us, but what we are also seeing is reduction in return rates. We have seen up to 40% reduction in return rates because consumers made a very informed purchase decision. The returns have come down for our partners, the merchants on the platform. So we are also adding value over there. Again, in this journey, across all touch points, we have been seeing AR playing a role. But one aspect which very few merchants or the retailers today are also aware of, that 3D and AR could also be used in the post funnel engagement. In terms of, let's say, in case of blinds or the installation thing that you were mentioning, right? AR could have a do-it-yourself kind of a kit also integrated, where you can point at the product that you just bought, and it could guide you step by step to install or kind of assemble the product once you have it in your home. And sometimes awesome. Even bring the user back into the funnel, because now you can cross-sell or upsell to the consumer as they're engaging with you and they're coming onto your platform to say that, what additional could go along with the product that they just bought, or kind of combine it with other stuff and show them how it will look. So there are so many hooks that 3D and AR brings into the entire consumer funnel, that we have started to look at it more as a circular loop than the traditional conical shape of a funnel, because now even after you have purchased, in the post-funnel engagement, you can bring it back to the top of the funnel. So it sort of becomes a continuous infinite loop with the consumers. So there also, with the lifetime value of the consumers are increasing on each and every platform. And so we have been trying to add value in all touch points for our partners.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny. Sometimes in life where you hear something, it's frustrating. It's like so obvious, but like you didn't think of it. I mean, that's just like once you mention it, just like duh, like that's like obviously like the next part of the life cycle and journey there. Just never thought of that. I was always kind of thinking in terms of, you know, just the initial purchase experience. But man, you mentioned one thing there, return rates dropping, which obviously is a huge cost for e-commerce companies. The return shipping, the interface with customers, like having to pay a customer support agent to deal with that. Oftentimes when the thing comes back, it's not in a sellable condition, especially if you're in a particular niche where it's basically illegal or not possible to resell something, you know, if it's like a medical product or a food product maybe or whatever, you actually can't even resell it. But even if you can, I mean, people don't take exactly great care of the product when they're putting it back in the box and shipping it back to you. And so oftentimes it's, just not in resellable condition. And even if it is, you still got to repackage it and relabel. I mean, just returns are just such a huge factor for e-commerce. It's something that we've been talking quite a bit about in our business because we have a couple of products that we've identified that have high return rates. It's like, how do we deal with that? And so it just seems so brilliant and obvious to help with like the installation process, or if a product just needs like a little bit of explanation in order to use it properly. But also, I'm a huge fan of email marketing and just trying to upsell and people and get more business out of existing customers. And wow, like mind blown, kind of thinking about, let's just say you're a clothing retailer or a shoe retailer or something, and you're I don't know if it's email or if it comes through an app or some other way to get people's attention, but suddenly it's like customized with you with the piece of clothing on, and really instead of wondering what it might look like because it's a folded up shirt on a website or whatever, it just really brings the reality aspect and messes with your emotions in a way that gives you a much higher likelihood to purchase, because when you see it on yourself, you're like, man, that looks really good. I want that or whatever. I can see so many examples of that. Man, I just, that's really interesting. So we're running out of time. So blow my mind with one more thing. Let's talk about one more thing that's coming with it.
So, one more thing, again, I'll probably go a slightly deeper onto the GAN front, the generation part of the AI, where you can start creating interactive videos also, given you mentioned about ads, right? So I'm going to double click a little bit on that, because let's say you have, using our platform, let's say you created a 3D object or a 3D product, then the extension of that could be, now you can start make it interactive or animated. Like let's say if it's a refrigerator, you can open up the doors of the refrigerator and see what's the content inside, and integrate such outputs on your ad ecosystems, so that it become a consistent experience for the consumers. So whether they see the ad on a Meta ecosystem or Google or anywhere else, that just flows from there on. It comes onto their website, and given it's web AR, you don't even need a specialized app to be downloaded. You can just interact with a web link. But the capability of starting to interact and animate and bring more feature discovery for the end consumer is where you will see, at least we are firm believers that a lot more value could be driven eventually out of it. But still early days, so lot to explore for us as well.
Yeah, interesting. So I guess to wrap things up, I'm curious if people that are out there are intrigued and want to implement this. What does the current technology look like? What does it cost to implement it, and what is capable today? Like, what can people actually do with it today?
Definitely. So we are in the mission of democratizing 3D and AR. So what we have done is we have built a seamless integration process. It's a single click app available today on Shopify and BigCommerce already. And there are other e-commerce platforms where we would be live very soon over the course of next few months. But the merchants on Shopify and BigCommerce today can just search for Avataar. That's Avatar, Avatar with an additional A, and find our app on the marketplace, use it and just go live with it. It's a no code to low code environment, so they technically don't need any expertise to build out 3D and AR experiences. Also, the 3D content, the whole nerf process, as I was referring to earlier, comes clubbed along with it. In terms of the cost, we believe in delivering value first and then have the paywall come into the equation. So we are a free app. They can download it. The 3D content creation is free for lifetime. So any merchant can come start use app and create 3D of their products, life size 3D, available free of cost to them. And when it comes to the experience part, we kind of integrate into the bottom funnel stage. So what we do, because we bring a little bit of uplift, we take a small pie out of the transaction or the conversion uplift that we bring. So we come again with the same theory of keeping our customers and the end consumer first, thinking about their benefit, and then take something from what's remaining out.
Very cool. So since I'm drinking coffee, we'll use this coffee mug as an example. Let's say I have a coffee mug business and I want to use your software, free to install. How do I generate the 3D image? How does that work? Is that because I assume that the app doesn't just take the photos that are currently on the Shopify store and aggregate those together to create a 3D environment. There has to be some additional photography involved to do that. Or maybe I'm wrong about that too. That would be amazing.
No, you're spot on. So most of the times, what happens is that, your PDP or the product pages don't have images from all angles. And what we don't want to do is kind of generate reality. Even though our technology can do it today, even with sparse input, which is like lesser number of inputs, but we don't do it in the context that the user would eventually be buying that product. So what we ask our partners and the merchants to do is using our app only, just a quick walk around the product. Let's say you have that coffee mug, you can just walk around that coffee mug once, it captures it, and it kind of then recreates it in 3D. So it's as simple as that. It takes overall process, fully automated, takes less than 30 minutes on the cloud. So there's no manual intervention as such required. You just have to do that initial walk around the product, which takes just a couple of minutes, and then you will get the 3D output in 30 minutes, as I said, free of cost.
Wow, very cool. Okay, so now you have a 3D rendering of the product on the website, and so in addition to your 2D images that you've taken, I assume kind of like in a sixth position or wherever it might be, it's this 3D version of the product. Is the AR component available as well? Can the consumer download a third party app or click a button on the website and see what that would look like on their desk?
Absolutely. And as you also rightly mentioned, we allow our merchants to integrate 3D and AR at various touch points. So whether as one of the tiles in the sequence of images on the product page, or a CTA or a button on that page, or an overlay widget on top of the images. So there are various ways in which they can take the 3D AR to the end consumer. And also, yes, the AR is part of the journey. It's come as the complete package. So while the user is looking at the 3D, which is the starting point, at a click of a button, they can change the context. It will open up their camera, and wherever they are, place the product in life-size form into their environment. So using AR is just at the click of a button within the experience. It doesn't, as I said, it doesn't need any specialized hardware or specialized app. Wherever the user is on the website, in the journey, they can initiate the experience and use it.
Amazing, man. That sounds awesome. Yeah, if it seems applicable to you, if you're listening out there, I highly recommend going to check this stuff out. And also, excuse me, I wasn't expecting it to be free to use. I mean, I looked into this years ago, and the technology was in the 5 figures to just upfront investment before you even get the first thing on your website. And so I think it's brilliant the way that you guys are going about this. And when you're showing value of 2x, 3x, 4x conversion rates, it makes it easy for people to stick with the technology. You already mentioned the website, but just real quick, if people are interested in the technology, again, where can they go? And also, how can they reach out to you if they have any questions from you?
Definitely. Our website is Avataar, that's Avataar.ai. So they'll find all the links to different platform integrations on our website. As I was earlier mentioning, Shopify and BigCommerce are the two ecosystems where we are already live. So on the marketplaces of Shopify and BigCommerce, they can search for Avataar and find it. And through our website, they can reach out to our team as well, who would be happy to kind of guide them for any other sort of integrations, because we do custom integration across enterprises as well.
Yeah, awesome. And there's also a demo on the website. So if you have any questions of what this looks like in real life, it's pretty effing cool. So go check it out. Again, Avataar.ai is the website. Gaurav, can't thank you enough for coming on and doing this. I'm excited for you guys. I think you're as an entrepreneur myself, and just always think about business, I think you guys are in a great spot, and I think we might be seeing you on the cover of Forbes someday. Just don't forget about me when you're touring the world in your yacht.
Thanks for your kind words, Mike. And we are still early in our journey, but yes, would be really happy to make some positive impact in the ecosystem. And I really enjoyed our conversation. Thanks again for having me on your show.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much.